I found a stranger's bikini in my husband's car 3 days before his mother's funeral. Let me say that again, slower, so you understand the full weight of it. 3 days before his mother's funeral. The woman who raised him. The woman who warned me about him. The woman whose inheritance would secure my children's future. 3 days before we laid her to rest, I held that red bikini in my trembling hands and felt my entire world crack open like an egg. But here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't fire and fury. Sometimes it's ice and patience. Sometimes, you have to smile at your husband's mistress across your mother-in-law's grave and shake her hand at the wake. My name is Eleanor Catherine Bradford, and this is the story of how I lost everything and won anyway. I'm 52 years old now, though the woman in the mirror some mornings looks ancient, and on other days, impossibly young, like the girl I was before life taught me its cruelest lessons. I live in a modest apartment in Portland, Oregon, with a view of the river and exactly 3 photographs on my walls. One of my children, one of my mother, and one of myself at 23, before I became Mrs. Eleanor Bradford, before I learned that love and stupidity sometimes wear the same face. People say I have kind eyes. Warm, they call them. Trustworthy. But there's something else there, too, if you look closely. A hardness, like a stone that's been polished by years of being tumbled in cold water. That hardness wasn't always there. I earned it. Paid for it with pieces of my soul I'll never get back. I was a litigation attorney once. Can you believe that? Fresh out of Columbia Law, top of my class, with offers from 3 major firms in Manhattan. I wore power suits and heels that clicked importantly on marble floors. I won cases. I made powerful men nervous. I had a future that glittered like diamonds under courtroom lights. Then I met Richard Bradford at a charity gala in 1997, and I made the oldest mistake in the book. I believed in love more than I believed in myself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. Not to the day I met Richard, but to the day I found that bikini. Because that's when Eleanor the Fool died, and someone much more dangerous was born. It was a Wednesday. October 9th. The kind of perfect autumn day that makes you believe in God. Golden leaves spinning in the afternoon light, the air crisp enough to bite, the sky so blue it hurt to look at directly. I remember thinking how beautiful it was as I pulled into the driveway of our Westchester home, the house Richard bought with his first big bonus after I'd given up my career to support his. Richard's Mercedes was in the garage, which was unusual. He'd texted me an hour earlier saying he was at the office, working late on the Henderson merger. But there was his car, and there was my husband, visible through the kitchen window, pacing while talking on his phone. His face flushed and animated in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not when he looked at me, anyway. I should have known then. A woman always knows, doesn't she? But I'd spent 24 years perfecting the art of not knowing, of smoothing over inconsistencies, of trusting when trust had long since expired. His mother, Patricia Bradford, had died 2 days earlier. Lung cancer, swift and merciless, despite her lifetime of yoga and green juice and expensive preventative medicine. She'd gone from diagnosis to death in 8 weeks, leaving Richard devastated and me. Well, I'd loved Patricia more than I'd loved my own mother, if I'm being honest. She was sharp-tongued and difficult and utterly without pretense. She saw through everyone, including her own son, especially her own son. "That boy will break your heart," she told me 3 weeks before the wedding, gripping my hand with surprising strength for a woman her age. "He's charming, Eleanor. Devastatingly so. But charm is just another word for liar when it comes dressed in good suits and better promises." "Are you sure?" I'd laughed it off, kissed her papery cheek, assured her that Richard loved me, that we were meant to be, that I could see our whole future stretched out before us like a golden road. I was 27 and brilliant and so catastrophically stupid. Now, standing in our driveway on that Wednesday afternoon, I made a decision that would seem insignificant to anyone watching. I decided to clean Richard's car. He'd been so stressed, so distracted with his mother's illness and death. The car was probably a mess. I'd vacuum it, wipe down the dashboard, maybe even take it through the car wash. A small gesture of love during a difficult time. See how we tell ourselves stories? How we narrate our own humiliation? The car was unlocked. I opened the passenger door and the smell hit me first. Perfume, not mine. Something younger, sweeter, with notes of vanilla and jasmine. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the feeling away. Maybe a colleague had ridden with him. Maybe he'd given someone a lift. The floor mats were clean. The back seat was empty. I popped open the glove compartment to check for the registration, make sure everything was in order, and that's when it fell out. Red. Bright, almost aggressive red. A bikini top small enough to fit in my palm, with a designer label I recognized from boutique shops in Soho. The kind of bikini that costs $300 and is designed to be removed. I stood there in the garage, holding it, my mind doing that strange thing where it knows and doesn't know simultaneously. The fabric was soft, expensive. There was a long dark hair tangled in one of the straps. Not mine. Mine is shorter, grayer, styled practically for a woman who'd long since stopped trying to be beautiful. My hands started shaking. Not trembling, shaking like an earthquake was moving through my bones. I heard a sound, a wounded animal sound, and realized it was coming from me. How long did I stand there? Minutes? Hours? Time did that liquid thing it does during trauma, stretching and contracting without pattern. Long enough for my legs to start aching. Long enough for the autumn light to shift from gold to amber. Then I heard Richard's voice from inside the house. "Eleanor? That you?" And just like that, instinct took over. I folded the bikini into a tight square and slipped it into my purse. Closed the glove compartment. Shut the car door quietly. When I walked into the house, I was smiling. "Hi, honey," I said, kissing his cheek. He smelled like cologne, his usual brand, and something else underneath it. Guilt, maybe, or just the staleness of lies. "You're home early," he said, looking at me with those blue eyes that had once made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Now they just looked through me, past me to whoever he was really seeing. "Thought I'd make us dinner," I replied, setting my purse carefully on the counter, feeling the weight of that red fabric like a grenade. Something comforting. "You've been under so much stress." His face softened. He pulled me into a hug, and I let him, feeling his heart beat against my cheek. A cheater's heart. A liar's heart. Still beating, still warm, still capable of holding me while planning my humiliation. "You're too good to me, Elle," he whispered into my hair. I closed my eyes, breathed him in one last time. The man I'd loved. The man I'd sacrificed everything for. The man who was about to learn that I was not, in fact, too good for anything. "I know," I whispered back. "Let me tell you about the girl I was before Richard Bradford. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, daughter of a postal worker and a school secretary. We didn't have money, but we had something rarer, expectations. My mother used to say, 'Eleanor, you're going to be somebody. Not for us, for you.' She worked double shifts so I could take SAT prep courses. My father drove me to Columbia for my interview in a car held together with prayers and duct tape. I got in on a full scholarship, pre-law. I was going to change the world, or at least make enough money that my parents could retire early. Law school was brutal, 3 years of 16-hour days, competing with people who'd had every advantage I'd lacked. But I was hungry in a way they weren't. I needed it more. And when you need something that badly, you become dangerous. By my 3rd year, I had offers from 3 firms. Skadden wanted me. So did Cravath. I was 26 years old and about to make $160,000 a year, more money than my parents had made combined in their best decade. Then I went to that charity gala. It was for some children's literacy foundation, the kind of event where wealthy people pay $1,000 a plate to feel good about themselves while eating salmon and drinking wine that cost more than my monthly rent. I'd been invited by a senior partner at one of the firms courting me, a woman named Judith Chen, who wanted to show me the social aspect of big law. Richard was there with his mother. Patricia was on the foundation's board, and she'd dragged her 34-year-old son along to meet suitable women. She told me this later, laughing that raspy laugh of hers. I was trying to marry him off before he became completely insufferable. He was beautiful. That's the only word for it. Tall, with dark hair just starting to silver at the temples, wearing a tuxedo like it was a second skin. But it wasn't his looks that caught me. Manhattan was full of beautiful men. It was the way he listened. When I talked about law, about justice, about the cases I wanted to take, he leaned in like I was revealing the secrets of the universe. "You're going to be extraordinary," he said, his blue eyes locked on mine. "I can see it. You have this fire. I was lost before dessert was served." We dated for 8 months. He courted me properly. Flowers, handwritten notes, long conversations that stretched into dawn. He met my parents and charmed them effortlessly. My mother actually cried with happiness. "He's the one, Eleanor. I can feel it." When he proposed, he did it simply. Just him and me in Central Park on a Sunday morning, with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "Marry me," he said. "Build a life with me. I know you have this incredible career ahead of you, but we'll make it work. I want to be the person who celebrates every victory with you." I said yes, with tears streaming down my face. The warning signs were there, of course. They always are. The way he'd check his phone during dinner. The work trips that seemed to happen whenever I had a big case. The female colleagues who were always just friends. But I was too in love to see, or too scared to look. Patricia saw, though. That conversation before the wedding haunts me still. We were at the plaza, having afternoon tea, discussing final preparations. She'd gone quiet, stirring her Earl Grey with a silver spoon, and then she'd looked at me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Eleanor, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Are you marrying my son because you love him, or because you think you're supposed to?" I'd laughed uncomfortable. "Of course I love him." "That's not what I asked." She set down her spoon with a gentle click. "My son is charming. He's always been charming. Even as a boy, he could talk his way out of anything. His father was the same way, God rest his soul. Charm covers a multitude of sins until it doesn't anymore." "Richard isn't like that," I'd protested. "Isn't he?" She'd reached across the table, gripped my hand. "Listen to me, dear girl. I see how you look at him, like he's magic. Like he's saved you from something. But you don't need saving, Eleanor. You're brilliant and capable and on the verge of an extraordinary career. My son needs you far more than you need him. And men who need things tend to destroy them." I'd pulled my hand away, hurt and defensive. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I like you," she'd said simply. "And because I love my son, which means I see him clearly. He will hurt you, Eleanor. Not because he's cruel, but because he's weak. And when he does, you'll have to decide whether to let him." I'd left that tea angry. Married Richard 3 weeks later in a ceremony at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Wore my mother's veil and Patricia's pearls. Promised to love and honor a man who would do neither. Patricia gave us a toast at the reception. I remember it word for word. "To my son and his brilliant bride, may you find the happiness you deserve. All of it. Every last bit." At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now I understand she was warning me one last time, in the only way she could without ruining my wedding day. I should have listened. That night, after finding the bikini, I made Richard's favorite dinner, pot roast with roasted vegetables and buttery mashed potatoes, the kind of meal that takes hours and fills the house with warmth. I set the table with our good china, the Wedgwood we'd gotten as a wedding gift and rarely used. Lit candles. Poured wine. Richard came down from his study looking exhausted, the weight of his mother's death visible in the slope of his shoulders. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. Then I remembered the bikini in my purse and the sympathy crystallized into something harder. "This is beautiful, Elle," he said, surveying the table. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "I wanted to," I replied, serving him a generous portion. "You've been under so much stress. How are you holding up?" He rubbed his face, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. I don't know. It still doesn't feel real. She was a force of nature, you know. I keep expecting her to call and tell me I'm doing something wrong. I almost laughed at that. Patricia would be calling him if she could, and she'd be telling him exactly what he was doing wrong. Instead, I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. She was so proud of you. I lied smoothly. Actually, Patricia had told me just a month before her diagnosis that Richard was coasting through life on good looks and other people's work. But Richard didn't need to know that. Not yet. We ate dinner making small talk about the funeral arrangements, the wake, the will reading scheduled for Monday. Richard was handling all of it as the only child. Patricia had been a wealthy woman. Old New York money from her father's shipping business, invested wisely over decades. The estate was worth somewhere north of $12 million. Did she ever tell you what was in the will? I asked carefully, cutting my pot roast into small pieces. Richard shook his head. Mom was private about that stuff. She updated it a few years ago after Dad passed, but she never discussed specifics. I assume it's standard. Everything's split between me and any grandchildren. Our children. Sarah, 22, finishing her master's in environmental science at Berkeley. And Michael, 19, pre-med at Johns Hopkins. Both brilliant. Both expensive. Both dependent on family money to finish their educations without crushing debt. That will be wonderful for the kids, I said. Sarah's program is another 2 years, and Michael's looking at medical school after. They'll be taken care of, Richard interrupted, refilling his wine glass. Mom loved those kids. And you, Elle? She always said you were the best thing that ever happened to this family. Did she? Or did she say I was too good for her son? I couldn't remember anymore. Memory is unreliable when it's been marinated in lies. After dinner, Richard retreated to his study to handle more funeral arrangements. I cleaned the kitchen, moving automatically, my hands washing dishes while my mind raced. The bikini sat in my purse, burning like evidence. Like accusation. Like opportunity. I pulled it out after midnight when Richard had gone to bed, sat at the kitchen table under the dim light of the pendant lamp and really looked at it. Size small. Designer label. Ears, French. Expensive. The kind of swimsuit that said, I'm worth it. The kind that said, I'm young enough to wear red. There was a small stain on the interior lining. Sunscreen. Maybe, or body oil. And that hair, long and dark, wrapped around the strap. I pulled it free, held it up to the light. Not a stray. Definitely attached deliberately, or caught there during passionate removal. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream. Wanted to storm upstairs and throw it in his face. Wanted to demand answers, tears, groveling, anything that felt like acknowledgement. But Patricia's voice echoed in my head. Men who need things tend to destroy them. Richard needed his mother's money. Needed the inheritance to maintain the lifestyle he'd built on credit and expectations. Needed me to play the grieving daughter-in-law at the funeral, the supportive wife at the wake, the respectable Mrs. Bradford at the will reading, and I needed him to need those things. I took out my phone, opened the browser, started researching New York inheritance law at 1:47 in the morning while my husband slept upstairs in our bed, probably dreaming of someone young enough to wear red bikinis. What I learned made me smile for the first time since Wednesday afternoon. In New York, a spouse is entitled to their elective share, roughly 1/3 of the estate, even if the will says otherwise. But that protection disappears if divorce proceedings begin before the testator's death. Patricia had died on Monday. The funeral was Saturday. The will reading was Monday. 5 days. I needed to stay married for 5 more days. Could I do that? Could I smile at my husband's lies, sleep beside his betrayal, perform grief and loyalty and love for 120 more hours? I looked at the bikini again. Thought about my daughter at Berkeley, my son at Hopkins. Thought about the life I'd given up, the career I'd sacrificed, the 24 years I'd poured into supporting Richard's ambitions while mine dried up and blew away like dead leaves. 5 days. I folded the bikini carefully, put it back in my purse, and went upstairs to bed, where I curved my body around my husband's sleeping form and kissed his shoulder gently. "I love you," I whispered to the darkness. The lie tasted like copper and victory. When did I stop being Eleanor Chen, attorney at law, and become Eleanor Bradford, wife of? It happened gradually, the way all great losses do. A series of small compromises that seemed reasonable at the time, until one day you wake up and don't recognize yourself in the mirror. Richard and I had been married for 3 years when I made junior partner at Morrison & Forster. I was 30 years old, working 70-hour weeks, building a reputation in corporate litigation. I was good, better than good. I just won a case against General Electric that made the legal news. Then I got pregnant with Sarah. "This is amazing," Richard had said, spinning me around our apartment living room. "We're going to be parents." I was terrified. Pregnancy wasn't in my 5-year plan. Partnership track was brutal for women even without children. But I loved Richard, and some part of me wanted what my mother had wanted for me. Everything. Career, family, the whole impossible dream. I worked until I was 8 months pregnant. Came back after 8 weeks of maternity leave, pumping breast milk in a supply closet between depositions. I hired a nanny, an older Jamaican woman named Diane who loved Sarah like her own. I thought I could do it. Be a mother and an attorney and a wife and still somehow sleep. Then Michael came along 3 years later, and something had to give. "The kids need you," Richard said one night after I'd missed Michael's first birthday because of an emergency client meeting. We were fighting, one of those tired, bitter arguments that couples have at 2 a.m. when they're too exhausted to be kind. "The kids have a nanny," I shot back. "They're fine. They need their mother," he insisted. "And honestly, Elle, you're running yourself into the ground. Look at you. You're exhausted. You're barely present even when you're home. You haven't slept a full night in years. This isn't sustainable." "Your career isn't sustainable?" I'd asked. "You work just as much as I do." "That's different. How?" "How is it different?" He'd sighed, that long-suffering sigh that men use when they're about to say something they know is wrong but believe anyway. "Because I'm the primary earner. Because my income supports this family. Because I'm the woman," I'd finished for him. "That's not what I said. But it's what you meant." We'd gone to bed angry that night. And the night after. And for weeks, the argument festered between us like an infection. Then Richard's firm offered him a senior position. More money, more prestige, more travel. And he came to me with a proposal. "What if you went part-time?" He'd suggested over dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, the one where he'd proposed. I should have known something was up. Men don't take you to the proposal restaurant unless they're about to ask for something big. "Just for a few years until the kids are in school. We could afford it now with my promotion. You could actually be present for them. And honestly, Elle, you'd be happier. I can see how much you're struggling." I'd looked at him across the table, at his earnest face, his concerned eyes. He believed what he was saying. Truly believed he was offering me a gift. "Part-time isn't a thing at Morrison," I'd said quietly. "You're either on the partnership track or you're not. If I go part-time, I'm stepping off permanently." "Is that so bad?" He'd reached for my hand. "You've already made junior partner. You've proven yourself. Maybe it's time to just breathe. Be a mom. Enjoy your life." As if being a mother meant giving up everything else that made life worth living. As if my ambitions were hobbies I could set aside and pick up again later. Like knitting. As if 24 months of being just a mom wouldn't destroy everything I'd worked for. But I looked at his face, and I thought about my children, and I remembered my mother working double shifts, and I thought, maybe he's right. Maybe I can't do it all. Maybe something has to give, and maybe that something should be my ego instead of my family. So I said yes. I gave Morrison & Forster my notice 3 weeks later. My supervising partner, a woman named Joan Whitaker who'd mentored me since day one, took me to lunch and said something I'll never forget. "You're making a mistake, Eleanor. Not because being a mother isn't worthwhile. It is. But because Richard isn't asking you to be a mother, he's asking you to be less than you are so he can be more than he is." That's not love. That's colonization. I'd laughed it off. Told her I was fine. This was my choice. I wanted this. She'd looked at me with such sadness. Call me when you need a reference letter. I'll write you one even in 10 years. Even in 20. But sweetheart, I hope you won't need it. I hope I'm wrong about this. She wasn't wrong. I stayed home for 6 months. Then a year. Then 3. Richard's career soared. He made partner, then senior partner, then managing director. We moved from our apartment to a house in Westchester with a 3-car garage and a pool. The kids thrived. I baked cookies and drove carpools and organized charity fundraisers and slowly, cell by cell, disappeared. By the time Sarah was in kindergarten and Michael was in preschool, and I thought maybe I could go back to work, 5 years had passed. The legal world had moved on without me. My contacts had dried up. The cases I'd worked on were ancient history. I sent out a few resumes half-heartedly. Got a few polite rejections. Eventually stopped trying. Richard never once suggested I go back. Why would he? I was the perfect wife by then, taking care of everything at home so he could focus entirely on work. His career was our career. His success was our success. I'd become an accessory to someone else's life. And the most insidious part? I told myself I was happy. I performed happiness so convincingly that I almost believed it myself. Until I'd catch myself staring at the newspaper, reading about cases, about trials, about attorneys my age making names for themselves, and feel this hollow ache in my chest where my ambitions used to live. Patricia saw through it. Of course, you're dying by inches, she'd told me at Sarah's 10th birthday party, finding me alone in the kitchen. I can see it happening. You're like a garden someone stopped watering. I'm fine, I'd insisted automatically. You're a liar, she'd replied, not unkindly. And worse, you're lying to yourself. My son has taken everything from you, Eleanor. And you let him because you love him more than you love yourself. That's not fair, isn't it? She'd studied me with those X-ray eyes. When was the last time you did something just for you? Not for Richard, not for the kids, not for this house or this life you've built around his needs. When was the last time you remembered who Eleanor Chen was before she became Mrs. Bradford? I couldn't answer, because I couldn't remember. Patricia had patted my hand. I've left you something in my will. Not money, Richard will get most of that. But something better, a choice. A door, if you're brave enough to walk through it when the time comes. I hadn't understood what she meant then. I understand now. The morning after finding the bikini, I woke up at 5 a.m. with perfect clarity. Richard was still asleep, snoring slightly, one arm thrown over his eyes to block out the early light. I studied him for a moment. This man I'd loved, sacrificed for, built a life around. He looked older in sleep, the lines around his eyes deeper, his jaw slack. Human. Vulnerable. I felt nothing. That should have scared me. That absence of feeling. Instead, it felt like freedom. I slipped out of bed, dressed in workout clothes, and went downstairs. Made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started doing what I should have done years ago, investigating my own husband. His phone was the obvious place to start, but Richard kept it password protected and literally slept with it on his nightstand. Too risky. But he'd left his iPad in the study, and we shared an iCloud account. I logged in and started scrolling through his messages. Nothing obvious. He wasn't stupid enough to text his mistress directly. But there were gaps, conversations that had been deleted, timestamps that didn't add up. And then I found it. A text thread with his assistant, Marcus, from 2 weeks ago. Richard. Is she here? Marcus, conference room B, brought the files you requested. Richard. Good. Hold my calls for an hour? Marcus. Of course. The presentation or the other thing? Richard. Both. Innocuous enough, except that Richard had told me he was at a client dinner that night. I cross-referenced his calendar. No meetings scheduled in conference room B. I checked his expense reports, which I still had access to from the shared account we used for household finances. No client dinner charged that night, But there was a charge at the Plaza Hotel. Room service for 2. Champagne and strawberries. My hands started shaking again. I closed the laptop, pressed my palms flat against the table, counted to 10 in Latin, something my father had taught me to do when I was upset. Unus, duo, tres, quatuor. When I could breathe normally, I opened the laptop again and kept digging. What I found over the next 3 hours was a pattern. Hotels. Always expensive. Always discreet. The Plaza. The St. Regis. Once the Pierre. Never the same place twice. And always charged to a corporate credit card as client entertainment. I made a spreadsheet. Dates, locations, amounts. Cross-referenced them with Richard's calendar, with his travel schedule. With the days he'd come home late, smelling like wine and someone else's perfume. 27 times in the last 18 months. 27 times my husband had betrayed me while I'd been home making dinner, driving our children to activities, managing his mother's declining health, being the perfect wife. I wanted to vomit. Instead, I poured myself more coffee and kept digging. The real breakthrough came from the most mundane source, our shared photo stream. Richard had taken a selfie 3 months ago at what appeared to be a charity event, one of those rubber chicken dinners for whatever cause was fashionable. He was in a tuxedo, grinning, and in the background, slightly out of focus, was a young woman in a red dress. I zoomed in. Dark hair, slim build, mid-20s maybe. And around her neck, I zoomed in further, a necklace. Gold, with a distinctive pendant shaped like a star. I'd seen that pendant before. On Patricia. My heart stopped. I went back through the photos, systematically scanning backgrounds. Found her 3 more times, once at a firm party, once at a client event, once at Patricia's 70th birthday party last year. She'd been there. At my mother-in-law's birthday party, smiling in the background while Patricia blew out candles, while I'd served cake, while Richard had given a toast about family being everything. I enlarged the birthday photo until her face was clear. She was beautiful, of course she was. They always are. Young enough that her skin still glowed without effort. Confident enough to wear red. Familiar enough that something tickled the back of my brain. I knew her. Somehow I knew her. I ran the photo through a reverse image search and got nothing. But when I cropped it to just her face and ran it again, I got a hit. A LinkedIn profile for a Madison Taylor, associate at Bradford Capital Management, Richard's firm. I clicked through to her profile. Madison Taylor, 27, MBA from NYU. Joined Bradford Capital 18 months ago. Before that, paralegal at Morrison & Forster, my old firm. The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. I clicked to her recommendations. There, at the bottom of the list, a glowing review from Richard Bradford himself. Madison is a remarkable talent with exceptional attention to detail and a bright future ahead of her. Any organization would be lucky to have her on their team. Posted 17 months ago, right before the hotel charges started. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. She was young enough to be his daughter. She'd worked at my old firm, might have even worked on cases I'd started before I left. And Richard had hired her, mentored her, seduced her, and brought her to his mother's birthday party. The audacity. The sheer fucking audacity. My phone buzzed, a text from Richard upstairs. Where are you? Coming back to bed? I looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back, making breakfast. Come down when you're ready. I love you. He sent back a heart emoji. I deleted my search history, closed the laptop, and started making blueberry pancakes. His favorite. When he came downstairs 20 minutes later, showered and smiling, I kissed him warmly and asked if he'd slept well. Like the dead, he said, squeezing my waist. You smell good. It's your mother's perfume, I lied. I wasn't wearing any perfume. I found a bottle of it yesterday and couldn't resist. I miss her, his face crumpled. He pulled me into a tight hug, and I felt him shake slightly against me. Real grief? Richard might be a liar and a cheat, but he'd loved his mother. That made what I was about to do almost fair. Almost. The funeral is in 2 days, he mumbled into my hair. I don't know how I'm going to get through it. You'll get through it, I said, rubbing his back. Because you're strong. Because she raised you to be strong. And because I'll be right there beside you, every step of the way. He pulled back, cupped my face in his hands. I don't deserve you, Elle. Finally, we agreed on something. I spent Friday at Patricia's house, helping Richard sort through her belongings. It was grueling work, both emotionally and physically. Every room held memories. The sunroom where Patricia and I had shared countless cups of tea, discussing everything from politics to poetry. The kitchen where she'd taught me to make her famous ossobuco. The library where she'd kept first editions of everything from Hemingway to Morrison. She wanted you to have these, Richard said, pulling a box of books from a shelf. She told me specifically, if anything happened to her, her book collection should go to Eleanor. She said you were the only one who appreciated them. I ran my fingers over the spines. The Bluest Eye, 100 Years of Solitude, Mrs. Dalloway. Books about women, loss, transformation. Patricia had known. Even in the end, she'd been trying to tell me something. She loved you, I said quietly, not looking at Richard. More than you knew. Richard made a sound, half laugh, half sob. She had a funny way of showing it sometimes. Always on my case about something. Work harder, be better, stop taking shortcuts. He paused, running a hand through his hair. Last time I saw her, you know what she said? She grabbed my hand and said, "Don't waste it, Richard. Don't waste what you've been given." I thought she meant the business, the money. But maybe she meant something else. Maybe she meant me, I said, the words out before I could stop them. He looked at me, startled. Elle, I'm going to check the bedroom, I interrupted, not wanting to hear whatever lie was about to come out of his mouth. See if there are any clothes for donation. Patricia's bedroom was exactly as she'd left it. Bed made with military precision. Reading glasses on the nightstand, a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt half finished. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel it. The grief, the rage, the betrayal. Let it wash over me like a wave until I could breathe again. Then I started searching. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it. A lockbox in the bottom drawer of her dresser, underneath silk scarves that still smelled like her perfume. The box was small metal with a combination lock. I tried Patricia's birthday. Nothing. Her wedding anniversary. Nothing. Then, on instinct, I tried my birthday. It opened. Inside was a letter, addressed to me in Patricia's elegant handwriting, and underneath it, a folder stuffed with papers. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've finally started looking for answers. Good. I was beginning to worry you'd let my son destroy you completely without ever fighting back. I'm not a sentimental woman. Eleanor, so I won't waste your time with platitudes. Here are the facts. I've known about Richard's infidelities for 3 years. All of them. I hired a private investigator after I saw him at the plaza with a girl young enough to be his daughter. The folder beneath this letter contains photographs, receipts, and detailed reports of every betrayal. Madison Taylor is the current one, but she's not the first. There have been at least 7 others that I know of. I didn't tell you because I'm a coward. I told myself you were happy, that you'd made your choice, that it wasn't my place to interfere. But the truth is I was angry at you. Angry that you'd given up so much for so little. Angry that you'd let yourself become so small. Angry that the brilliant woman I met at that charity gala had disappeared into the role of my son's wife. But anger is useless now. So instead I'm giving you weapons. My will leaves the bulk of my estate to Richard, but with conditions he doesn't know about yet. If he's married at the time of the reading, his inheritance is held in trust with you as co-trustee, requiring both signatures for any withdrawal over $50,000. If he divorces within 5 years of my death, 40% of his inheritance transfers to you directly, plus a penalty clause that costs him an additional $1 million. I did this for 3 reasons. First, to protect you if you choose to leave. Second, to punish him if he drives you away. Third, to give you leverage if you choose to stay. I don't know which choice you'll make, Eleanor, but I want you to make it with full knowledge of who my son is. Not who you hoped he'd be. Not who he pretends to be. Who he actually is. The investigator's name is Martin Chen, no relation, but I thought the coincidence was auspicious. His contact information is in the folder. He has additional documentation if you need it. I'm sorry I couldn't be braver for you when I was alive. I'm sorry I didn't shake you harder, tell you more plainly what I saw happening. I'm sorry I let my love for my son override my loyalty to you. But I'm not sorry for this. For giving you the truth. For giving you a choice. Be brave, Eleanor. Be the woman I met 24 years ago. The one who was going to change the world. She's still in there somewhere, buried under years of compromise and kindness. Wake her up. She has work to do. With all my love and respect, Patricia. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face silently. Then I open the folder, photographs, dozens of them. Richard with different women over the years, hotels, restaurants. One particularly damning shot of him kissing someone in his car. Not Madison, someone else, someone from 2 years ago. Receipts for jewelry I'd never seen, flowers I'd never received, romantic getaways he'd supposedly taken alone, and a full dossier on Madison Taylor. 27 years old, ambitious, from a middle-class family in Ohio, student loans she was still paying off. Started as Richard's assistant, promoted to associate 6 months later, right around the time the hotel charges became regular. There was even a copy of her lease agreement. She lived in a studio apartment in Chelsea that cost $3,400 a month, more than she could afford on her salary. But there were bank statements showing monthly deposits of $2,500 from an LLC called RB Holdings, Richard's initials. He was paying her rent. I sat on Patricia's bed, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, and something inside me that had been cracked since Wednesday afternoon finally shattered completely. But from the broken pieces, something new emerged. Something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I was going to destroy him, not out of spite, though there was certainly spite involved. Not just for revenge, though the revenge would be sweet. But because Patricia was right, I'd let myself become small, and small women don't survive. They get consumed. They disappear. They wake up at 70 realizing they never lived at all. I wasn't going to be that woman. I took out my phone and called the number in the folder. Chen Investigations. A male voice answered. Professional, neutral. Martin Chen? My name is Eleanor Bradford. Patricia Bradford was my mother-in-law. She left me your information. A pause. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Bradford. Patricia was a remarkable woman. She was. And she told me you've been investigating my husband. I have. I need everything you have. Everything. And I need you to keep investigating until Monday. Can you do that? What am I looking for? I thought about the bikini, about Madison Taylor, about 24 years of swallowed anger and performed happiness. Everything, I repeated. Bank accounts, property, investments, anywhere he might be hiding money. Any evidence of ongoing infidelity, and I need proof that holds up legally. Can you do that by Monday morning? That's a tight timeline. I'll pay triple your usual rate. Plus expenses, another pause. Patricia set up a retainer for exactly this purpose. It's already been paid. Consider me at your disposal, Mrs. Bradford. I'll have a preliminary report to you by Sunday evening. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Mrs. Bradford? His voice softened slightly. Patricia talked about you a lot. She was rooting for you. We all are. I hung up before I started crying again. Downstairs, I heard Richard calling for me. Elle, everything okay up there? I looked at myself in Patricia's mirror. 52 years old, hair graying, face lined with years of smiling through pain. I looked tired. I looked defeated. I straightened my spine. Wiped my eyes. Smoothed my hair. When I walked down those stairs, I was smiling. Everything's perfect, I called back. I found something wonderful. Your mother's book collection. She left instructions that I should have it. Isn't that sweet? Richard appeared at the bottom of the stairs, smiling up at me. She knew how much you loved to read. That's really nice, Elle. Here, let me help you carry the boxes. He was being so kind, so attentive, playing the grieving son, the devoted husband. I wondered if Madison knew he was this good at lying, or if she thought she was special, the one who'd finally captured his heart. Poor girl. She had no idea what was coming. Neither did Richard. The funeral was everything Patricia would have hated. Too long, too sentimental, too full of people who'd barely known her. But it was beautiful in its way. St. Thomas Church on Fifth Avenue, filled with white roses and soft light. Over 300 people came to pay their respects. Patricia had been well loved in the circles that mattered. I wore black Armani and Patricia's pearls. Stood beside Richard as he eulogized his mother, his voice breaking in all the right places. He talked about her strength, her wisdom, her unconditional love. He cried genuine tears. The thing about liars is they're often very good at truth when it serves them. I scanned the crowd during the service, looking for dark hair, red lips, youth masquerading as respect. Found her in the back, third row from the last. Madison Taylor, wearing tasteful black, crying discreetly into a tissue. The audacity. She'd come to the funeral of the woman whose son she was sleeping with. Had probably been sleeping with him while Patricia was dying. Was probably planning to sleep with him tonight, while he was vulnerable and grieving. Our eyes met across the church. She looked away quickly, but not before I saw it. Guilt, shame, and underneath, something else. Fear, maybe, or recognition. She knew I knew. After the service, there was a reception at Patricia's club, one of those old money establishments where women still wore gloves and men still knew which fork to use. Richard worked the room like the politician he'd never become, accepting condolences, telling stories, being charming. I played my part perfectly. The devoted wife, the loving daughter-in-law. I hugged people I didn't know, thanked them for coming, spoke warmly about Patricia's influence on my life. It was the performance of my life. Madison showed up to the reception, because of course she did. I watched Richard's face when he saw her. A flicker of something panic? Excitement? Quickly smoothed away into professional courtesy. She approached us in the receiving line. Up close, she was even younger than I'd thought. 27 going on 19, with that kind of dewy freshness that only comes from never having lost anything that matters. Mr. Bradford. Mrs. Bradford, she said, her voice soft and respectful. I'm so sorry for your loss. Patricia was an incredible woman. Thank you, Richard said, shaking her hand formally. Madison works at my firm, he added, turning to me. She did some work with Mom on the foundation board. A lie. Madison had never worked with Patricia. I knew because I'd helped with the foundation. I knew every board member, every volunteer. Madison Taylor had never been among them, but I smiled warmly. Extended my hand. How lovely. Patricia always appreciated young people with initiative. Did you know her well? Madison's eyes darted to Richard, then back to me. Not as well as I would have liked, but she was always very kind to me. Kind, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. Yes, Patricia was selective about her kindness. She only gave it to people she trusted. The color drained from Madison's face. She understood. Good. Well, she said, backing away slightly, I should let you both return to your guests. Again, I'm so sorry she fled. Richard didn't notice. He was already turning to the next person in line, playing his role. But I noticed. I saw her leave the room, saw her practically run for the exit. Run, little girl. Run far and fast. Patricia's best friend. A woman named Catherine who was 75 and sharper than most people half her age, materialized at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. That was delicious, she murmured, handing me a glass. Patricia would have loved it. I don't know what you mean, I said primly. Of course you don't. Catherine sipped her champagne. Patricia told me about the girl, and about what she left you in her will. She wanted me to tell you something if I got the chance. What's that? That you're stronger than you think. Meaner than you think. And when you finally stop being nice, you're going to be absolutely terrifying. Catherine smiled, a sharp-toothed smile that reminded me of Patricia. She also said to tell you that revenge is a dish best served cold, but spite is even better served with legal documentation. I laughed despite myself. That sounds like her. She loved you like a daughter, Eleanor. More than Richard, if I'm being honest. She was just waiting for you to love yourself that much. Catherine drifted away into the crowd, leaving me standing there with my champagne and my thoughts. The reception lasted 4 hours. I was gracious and warm and perfect for every single minute. By the time we got home, I was exhausted, not from grief, but from the sheer effort of pretending. Richard collapsed on the couch in our living room, loosening his tie. God, that was brutal. I need a drink. I'll make you one, I said, heading to the bar. Scotch? Please. I poured him 3 fingers of Macallan, neat. Brought it to him. Sat beside him on the couch and let him lean against me. You were amazing today, he said quietly. I couldn't have gotten through it without you. That's what marriage is, I replied, stroking his hair. Being there when it matters. He lifted his head, looked at me with genuine emotion. I love you, Elle. I don't say it enough, but I do. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I kissed his forehead. I know. We sat like that for a long time. Him drinking his scotch, me holding him, both of us grieving. Him for his mother, me for the marriage that had died the moment I found that bikini. Around midnight, Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then set it face down quickly. Work? He muttered. On a Saturday night? There's a deal closing Monday. Bad timing, but clients don't care about funerals. Of course, I said. You should answer it if you need to. It can wait. He finished his scotch, kissed my cheek. I'm going to bed. You coming? Soon. I want to clean up a little first. After he went upstairs, I picked up his phone. Still unlocked. Opened his messages, Madison. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Can I see you? Richard, not tonight. Too risky. Tomorrow. Usual place. Madison. I miss you. Richard. Miss you too. This will all be over soon, promise. I took screenshots. Forwarded them to myself. Deleted the evidence. Then I went upstairs, slipped into bed beside my husband, and dreamed about Monday. Sunday was supposed to be a day of rest. Instead, I spent it preparing for war. Martin Chen's preliminary report arrived at 6 p.m., delivered by encrypted email to a new account I'd created just for this purpose. I read it in Patricia's library. I'd started thinking of it as mine now, along with all her books, while Richard was upstairs napping. The report was devastating in its thoroughness. Madison Taylor wasn't the first. She wasn't even the 5th. Martin had documented 8 different affairs over the past 10 years, some overlapping, all following the same pattern. Young woman, professional connection, expensive gifts, hotel rooms charged to corporate accounts. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the money. Richard had been siphoning funds from our joint accounts for years, moving money into accounts I didn't know about. He had a secret LLC, RB Holdings, the same one paying Madison's rent. He had investments in properties I'd never heard of. He had a safe deposit box at a bank in Connecticut containing over $200,000 in cash. Our retirement account, the one I'd thought was secure, the one we'd been building for 24 years, had been depleted by nearly half. Richard had taken early withdrawals, paid the penalties, and moved the money into his private accounts. He'd been preparing to leave me. Maybe not immediately, but eventually, setting up an exit strategy, a safety net, a whole separate financial life, while I'd been home making dinner and managing his mother's care and being the perfect wife. The betrayal of the affairs was one thing, but this systematic theft, this financial infidelity, was something else entirely. This was premeditated, calculated. This was a man who'd looked at his wife of 24 years and seen not a partner but a liability to be managed. I sat in Patricia's chair, reading the report 3 times, and felt something inside me crystallize into diamond-hard certainty. I wasn't just going to leave him. I was going to ruin him. I called Martin Chen. "Mrs. Bradford," he answered on the first ring. "You got the report?" I did. "It's thorough. There's more if you need it. I can keep digging." "I need one more thing," I said. "Can you find out where Richard is planning to be tomorrow night?" "After the will reading?" "Give me an hour." He called back 45 minutes later. "The Plaza Hotel, room 817, reservation under the name Robert Bradshaw. Close enough to his real name that he won't forget it. Different enough that casual observers won't make the connection. Reserved from 8 p.m. to midnight. Room service ordered in advance. Champagne, strawberries, oysters. The usual celebration package." "He's planning to celebrate," I said flatly. "Looks that way. Probably expecting a big inheritance. Planning to share the good news with his girlfriend. Can you do something for me?" "Name it." "Book the room next door. Under my name. I want to be there when he arrives." A pause. "Mrs. Bradford, I have to ask. What are you planning?" "Justice," I said. "Patricia style." Richard came downstairs around 7 p.m., looking rested. "What are you up to?" he asked, finding me in the library surrounded by Patricia's books. "Reading," I said, holding up The Awakening by Kate Chopin. "Patricia loved this one. It's about a woman who discovers she's been living someone else's life." Richard didn't catch the irony. "That's nice, honey. Listen, about tomorrow. The will reading is at 2 p.m. at Marshall's office. Should only take an hour or so. Then I thought maybe we could have dinner. Just the 2 of us. Celebrate Mom's life properly." "That sounds lovely," I lied. "Where were you thinking?" "I'll surprise you. Somewhere special." "I can't wait." He kissed the top of my head, completely oblivious. "I'm going to work on some emails. Big day tomorrow." "Big day," I agreed. After he left, I returned to the book. Read the ending where Edna walks into the ocean, choosing death over a life of compromise. I'd always thought it was tragic. Now I understood it differently. Sometimes destruction is the only way to be reborn. I texted Martin Chen. "Book the room." "I'll be there at 7:30. His response, "Already done." "Good luck tomorrow, Mrs. Bradford." Patricia would be proud. I hoped so. God, I hope so. The morning of the will reading, I woke up calm. Eerily calm. Richard was nervous beside me, fidgeting with his coffee cup at breakfast. "You okay?" I asked. Just thinking about Mom. About what she would have wanted. "I hope I can live up to her expectations." "I'm sure you will," I said, buttering my toast. "Patricia knew exactly who you were. I think she planned accordingly. He didn't catch that either." We drove to the attorney's office in Manhattan in silence. Richard's lawyer, Donald Marshall, had been Patricia's attorney for 30 years. He was a severe man in his 70s, all gray suits and disapproving frowns. He shook our hands in the conference room and gestured to chairs across from his massive desk. "Shall we begin?" he asked, opening a folder. Richard nodded, taking my hand. Playing the devoted son, the united couple. Marshall began reading. The will was lengthy, full of legal language and specific bequests. To various charities, amounts ranging from $10,000 to $100,000. To Catherine and Patricia's other friends, personal items and mementos. To our children, Sarah and Michael, education trusts of $500,000 each. Then came the main provision. To my son, Richard Bradford, I leave the remainder of my estate, currently valued at approximately $10.8 million, including all property, investments, and liquid assets. However, this inheritance comes with the following conditions. Richard sat up straighter. I squeezed his hand supportively. Marshall continued. First, if Richard is married at the time of this reading, all inherited funds will be placed in a joint trust requiring both his and his spouse's signatures for any withdrawal exceeding $50,000. Second, the trust will be managed by co-trustees, Richard Bradford and Eleanor Bradford, with decisions requiring unanimous agreement. Third, if Richard and Eleanor divorce within 5 years of my death, Eleanor will receive 40% of the remaining inherited assets outright. plus a penalty payment of $1 million from Richard's portion. The room went silent. Richard's hand tightened around mine painfully. What? That's not— Mom wouldn't— Marshall looked at him over his glasses. Your mother was quite clear about her intentions, Richard. She came to me 6 months ago and made these changes specifically. She even left a letter explaining her reasoning, though I'm not required to share it. I want to hear it, I said quietly. Marshall hesitated, then pulled out another envelope. She said to read this only if Eleanor requested it. He opened it and began to read in his dry, legal voice. Richard, if you're hearing this, it means you're married to Eleanor when I died. Good. She deserves the protection I'm giving her. You have never appreciated what you have in that woman. She gave up everything for you, her career, her ambitions, her identity, and you've repaid her with carelessness and betrayal. Don't insult my memory by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. Eleanor, if you're hearing this, it means you've found the truth. I hope you've also found your strength. This trust isn't a gift, it's a weapon. Use it wisely. You've earned it. This inheritance is meant to secure my grandchildren's future and to ensure Eleanor is protected. Richard, you'll get your money, but only if you treat your wife with the respect she deserves. If you don't, she gets her share, and then some. Consider it motivation to be the man I tried to raise instead of the man you've become. With disappointed love, Mom. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard's face had gone white. Then red, then white again. This is ridiculous. She can't do this. It's my inheritance. It's her money, Marshall said calmly, and she could do whatever she wanted with it. The will is ironclad, Richard. I wrote it myself. You can contest it, of course, but you'll lose. And the contest will cost you considerably more than compliance. Richard stood up abruptly, dropping my hand, started pacing. This is because of— she didn't understand. I never— Richard, I said softly. Sit down. Don't tell me to sit down. Did you know about this? Did she tell you? I looked at him steadily. No, I didn't know about the specific provisions. But I'm not surprised. Your mother was a wise woman. A wise? She's trying to control me from the grave. She's trying to protect me, I corrected. There's a difference. Marshall cleared his throat. I'll need both your signatures on the trust documents. There are also some tax forms and— I'm not signing anything, Richard said. Not until I talk to my own lawyer. That's your right, Marshall agreed. But understand that the inheritance is frozen until you do. No access to any of the funds, property, or investments, and the tax implications of delay could be significant. Richard grabbed his coat. I need air. I need to think. He stormed out, leaving me sitting across from Marshall in the suddenly quiet office. The attorney regarded me with something like approval. Patricia told me you were remarkable. I'm beginning to see what she meant. May I have a copy of the will? And the trust documents? Of course. I prepared a full packet for you. He slid a folder across the desk. Mrs. Bradford, between you and me, Patricia knew exactly what she was doing. She loved her son, but she didn't trust him. And she trusted you completely. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. One more thing. He reached into his desk, pulled out a small envelope with my name on it in Patricia's handwriting. She left this for you. Told me to give it to you privately, after the reading. I took it with trembling hands. Didn't open it there, I couldn't. Thank you. For everything. Good luck, Mrs. Bradford. Something tells me you're going to need it. And something also tells me you're going to be just fine. I walked out of that office into the Manhattan afternoon, the folder under one arm, Patricia's final letter in my purse, and my phone buzzing with angry texts from Richard. I didn't read them. Instead, I got a coffee from the Starbucks on the corner, found a bench in a small park, and opened Patricia's letter. Dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, the will reading is over, and Richard is probably furious. Good, let him be angry. He's earned it. By now you know about the trust, the conditions, the protections I've put in place. But I want you to understand something. This isn't about the money. Not really. This is about giving you a choice. You can stay. Take the inheritance, be co-trustee, control half of everything Richard thought was his alone. Make him work for every dollar, prove himself worthy of you every single day. It's a kind of revenge, slow, legal, permanent. Or you can leave. Take your 40% plus the penalty, walk away with nearly $5 million, and start the life you gave up 24 years ago. Go back to law, travel, do whatever the hell you want without asking permission or making accommodations. Either way, you win. But Eleanor, my darling girl, and you are my girl, more than Richard was ever fully my boy, I want you to know something. You don't owe him anything, not your loyalty, not your forgiveness, not your presence. What you gave him was a gift and he treated it like a right. That's on him, not you. Whatever you choose, choose it for yourself. Not for the kids, they're grown. Not for me, I'm dead. Not for the life you've built or the person you've been. Choose it for the woman you could still become. Be brave, my dear. Be selfish. Be ruthless if you need to be. And know that wherever I am, I'm cheering for you. All my love, now and always. Patricia. I cried on that bench for exactly 5 minutes. Big, ugly, gasping sobs that made tourists give me wide berth. Then I dried my eyes, fixed my makeup using my phone camera, and checked the time. 4:47 p.m. In 2 hours and 13 minutes, Richard would be at the plaza, room 817, celebrating his inheritance with Madison Taylor, and I would be in room 816, waiting. I stood up, threw away my coffee cup, and headed for the subway. Time to finish this. Room 816 at the plaza was exactly as expensive as you'd expect. Cream and gold. Plush carpets, a view of Central Park turning dark in the autumn evening. I'd checked in at 7:15, giving the clerk my credit card and ID without hesitation. Eleanor Bradford, room 816. Let there be a paper trail. I set up my phone on the desk, facing the wall that connected my room to 817. Opened the voice memo app and hit record. Then I waited. At 7:52, I heard the door next door open. Richard's voice familiar and warm. After you. A female laugh. Madison. This is beautiful. Richard, you didn't have to. I wanted to celebrate properly. Today was huge. Mom left me everything. That's wonderful. You must be so relieved. A pause. Sounds I didn't want to interpret. Then Richard again. Order whatever you want from room service. I'm going to take a quick shower. Okay. Don't be long. Water running. I pressed my ear to the wall, heard Madison on the phone. Yes, room 8117. The celebration package that was pre-ordered plus... Do you have chocolate-covered strawberries? Perfect, 20 minutes? That's fine. More movement. The shower stopping. Then Richard's voice closer to the wall. Come here. I couldn't listen to more. Didn't need to. I had what I needed. Confirmation they were both here, confirmation of the celebration, confirmation of everything I'd suspected. I stopped recording. Sent the audio file to my private email. Then I picked up the phone and called the front desk. Yes, front desk, how may I help you? Hi, this is Eleanor Bradford in room 816. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I can hear quite a lot of noise from the room next door. Room 817, I think? I hate to complain, but I have an early meeting tomorrow and... I apologize, Mrs. Bradford. Let me look into that for you. Would you like us to send security to ask them to keep it down? Would you? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hung up and waited. 11 minutes later, there was a knock on the door next door. A male voice. Hotel security. We've had a noise complaint. Silence. Then Richard, cautious. There must be some mistake. We just got here. May I have your name, sir? Robert Bradshaw. I have a reservation. May I see your ID, please? A longer pause. Is there a problem? Sir, the reservation is under Robert Bradshaw, but your credit card on file is Richard Bradford. And we've had a complaint from Mrs. Eleanor Bradford next door about excessive noise. Can you explain the discrepancy? Beautiful. Perfect. Thank you, Plaza Security Protocols. There's no discrepancy. Bradshaw is my middle name. I sometimes use, and are you here with Mrs. Eleanor Bradford? No, this is a private, sir. I'm going to need you to come down to the front desk to sort this out. We take guest privacy and security very seriously. Richard's voice panicking now. Look, this is a misunderstanding. My wife is next door. According to our records, yes. Room 816. Checked in this evening under Eleanor Bradford. The silence next door was absolute. I counted to 30. Then I walked out of my room, standing in the hallway just as Richard's door opened. He froze when he saw me. I was wearing Patricia's pearls and the red bikini from his glove compartment over my clothes, the straps visible above my sweater neckline. Hello, Richard, I said pleasantly. Fancy meeting you here. Behind him, Madison appeared, wrapped in the hotel robe, her face white with horror. The security guard looked between us, clearly realizing he'd stumbled into a domestic situation well above his pay grade. Mrs. Bradford, do you know this man? I do, I said, smiling. He's my husband. Richard, aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? Richard couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Madison found her voice first. Mrs. Bradford, I can explain. Can you? I turned to her, still smiling that terrible smile I'd practiced in the mirror. Please do. I'm dying to hear how you explain wearing a hotel robe in my husband's celebration suite on the night he received his mother's inheritance. The mother you claim to barely know at her funeral. The funeral where you cried so prettily. Eleanor, Richard finally managed. It's Mrs. Bradford to you right now, I said coldly. We're not really on informal terms anymore, are we? Not when you're Robert Bradshaw, celebrating in a hotel room you paid for with money you stole from our joint accounts. Did you know he was stealing from me, Madison? Did he tell you that part? The security guard shifted uncomfortably. Folks, maybe you should call the police, I said pleasantly. I'd like to report identity fraud and theft. My husband has been using a false name to conduct an affair and has misappropriated marital assets to fund it. I have documentation. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder where I'd saved everything. Screenshots of financial transfers, hotel receipts, bank statements showing money moved from our accounts to his private LLC. Oh, and a recording from tonight, where he explicitly states his mother left him everything. Which is interesting, because that's not quite true, is it, Richard? Richard's face had gone from white to gray. Elle, please. Let's talk about this privately. Privately? I laughed, and it was Patricia's laugh, sharp and cutting. You want privacy now? After 8 affairs? After stealing from our retirement fund? After bringing your mistress to your mother's birthday party? After planning to celebrate your inheritance, our inheritance according to the will, with a woman young enough to be your daughter? 8? Madison whispered, stepping away from Richard. You said this was different? I offered helpfully. Special, true love? Yes, I imagine he did. He told me the same thing 24 years ago. How's that working out for you, Madison? The girl started crying. Real tears this time, not the pretty ones from the funeral. I didn't know. He said you were separated. He said the marriage was over, that you were just waiting until the kids were older. The kids are in their 20s, I said. And we had dinner together last night. As a couple, so either Richard is the world's slowest divorce processor, or he lied to you. Which do you think is more likely? Madison looked at Richard with dawning horror. You lied. About everything. Oh my God, I'm so stupid. You're 27, I said, not unkindly. Stupid is age appropriate. What's his excuse? The security guard, clearly out of his depth, spoke into his radio. Yeah, I need a manager up here. And maybe we should have someone from NYPD on standby. It's complicated. Richard found his voice, and with it, his anger. You planned this. You set this up. You knew where I'd be. Oh, I knew a lot of things, Richard. Your mother made sure of that. She hired a private investigator 3 years ago. Did you know that? She documented everything. Every affair. Every hotel room. Every dollar you stole. She kept a file on you like you were a criminal she was building a case against. That's not... Mom wouldn't... Your mother loved you, I said. and my voice finally cracked with real emotion. But she didn't trust you, and she spent her final months making sure you couldn't destroy me the way you've been planning to. The trust, Richard. The co-trustee requirement. The divorce penalty. She saw you coming. A hotel manager arrived, a polished woman in her 50s who took one look at the scene and sighed deeply. Mr. Bradford, Mrs. Bradford, perhaps we could discuss this in a private office. No, I said firmly. We're done discussing things privately. That's how I ended up here. 24 years of private discussions while my husband systematically betrayed me. We're having this conversation right here, where everyone can see. Let Madison see who she's been sleeping with. Let the hotel staff see what kind of man uses fake names and corporate cards to fund his affairs. Let everyone see. Eleanor, you're being hysterical. Don't you dare, I said, my voice dropping to something dangerous. Don't you dare try to gaslight me right now. I found the bikini. I found the bank statements. I found the hotel receipts. I found everything, Richard. And you know what the worst part is? Not the cheating, not even the stealing. It's that you made me small. You took a woman who was going to change the world and convinced her that her value was in making your dinner and managing your mother's illness and supporting your career while hers died. You colonized my life and called it love. The hallway had gone silent. Other guests had emerged from their rooms, drawn by the commotion. I didn't care. Let them see. Let them all see. Patricia left me a letter, I continued. Actually, she left me several. You want to know what she said? She said she was sorry she didn't shake me harder when there was still time. Sorry she didn't tell me sooner what she knew about you. Sorry she raised a son who was charming enough to destroy people and weak enough to do it. That's not fair. Fair? I stepped closer to him and he actually stepped back. You want to talk about fair? I gave up a partnership at Morrison & Forster for you. I was 26 years old and had the world at my feet, and you convinced me that being your wife was more important than being myself. And you know what? I believed you. I loved you enough to make myself smaller so you could feel bigger. And you repaid that by cheating on me with at least 8 women, stealing from our accounts, and planning to leave me with nothing. I never planned to leave you, he said, but it sounded hollow even to him. Then what was the exit strategy for, Richard? The hidden accounts? The cash in the safety deposit box? The separate life you've been building? You were preparing to leave. You just hadn't decided when. Probably waiting until your mother died so you could take the inheritance with you. Except she outmaneuvered you. She saw you for exactly what you are. Madison had sunk to the floor, sitting in the hallway in her hotel robe, sobbing. The manager was on her phone, clearly calling for backup. The security guard stood frozen, probably wondering if this was the weirdest shift he'd ever worked. Richard tried one more time. Elle, please, can we go somewhere and talk? Just the two of us? I know I've made mistakes, but we can work through this. For the kids. For the life we've built. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Maybe for the first time in years. Saw past the handsome face, the charming smile, the practiced sincerity. Saw the weak man underneath, the one Patricia had warned me about 24 years ago. No, I said simply. We can't work through this. Because there's no we to work through. There's you who lied and cheated and stole. And there's me, who's finally done being your victim. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow morning. And thanks to your mother's will, it's going to cost you $1 million plus 40% of the inheritance you thought was yours alone. That's about $4.8 million if you're keeping track. You can't, the trust requires both our signatures for large withdrawals. So every penny you want to spend, you have to ask me for. Every investment, every purchase, every dollar. You need my permission. How does that feel, Richard? How does it feel to finally need something from me? He was crying now. Actual tears. Please, Elle, don't do this. I love you. No, I said, and I felt lighter than I had in years. You love what I did for you. The life I built around your needs. The career I sacrificed. The person I became to make you comfortable. But you never loved me. You don't even know who I am. I turned to Madison, who was still sitting on the hallway floor. A piece of advice from one woman to another. When a married man tells you his wife doesn't understand him, his wife understands him perfectly. That's why she's leaving. Then I turned to the manager. I'll be checking out of room 816. Please charge everything to Richard Bradford's account, the one in his real name. And I'd recommend you flag Robert Bradshaw as an alias in your system for the next woman he tries to bring here. I walked back to my room, gathered my purse and coat, and walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard Richard calling my name. Heard Madison still crying, heard the manager trying to restore order. I didn't care. I walked out of the Plaza Hotel into the Manhattan night, and for the first time in 24 years, I knew exactly who I was. I'm sitting in my Portland apartment now, telling you this story, and I can see the river from my window. It's spring, and the cherry blossoms are blooming. Pink and perfect and temporary, the way beautiful things often are. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Richard fought it, of course. Hired expensive lawyers, tried to contest Patricia's will, argued that I'd entrapped him, that I'd planned the whole Plaza confrontation to humiliate him. He was right about that last part. I had planned it. Carefully. Deliberately. With Patricia's ghost cheering me on every step of the way. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Especially after my attorney, Joan Whitaker, my old mentor from Morrison and Forster, who came out of retirement just for my case, presented the private investigators' reports. 8 affairs: financial infidelity, theft of marital assets, using corporate accounts for personal expenses. Richard's firm fired him. Not for the affairs, they didn't care about that. But for the misuse of corporate funds. That was embezzlement and they couldn't overlook it. Last I heard, he's working at a smaller firm in Connecticut, making half what he used to. Living in a condo instead of our Westchester house. Madison? She left Bradford Capital before she was fired. Moved back to Ohio. I heard she got engaged to someone her own age. I hope he's kind to her. I hope she learned something from this nightmare that I took 24 years to learn. Charming men are often just liars in expensive suits. As for me, I took my $4.8 million and bought this apartment outright. No mortgage, no husband's name on the deed, just mine. Eleanor Chen Bradford. I kept the Bradford, not out of sentimentality, but because I earned it. 24 years of my life paid for that name. I enrolled in a refresher course for attorneys returning to practice. Turns out, Joan kept her promise. She wrote me a recommendation letter that could have raised the dead. I started her firm next month. Not as partner, not yet, but as senior associate with a clear path to partnership. I'm 52 years old and I'm starting my career over. My children? Sarah called me a superhero when I told her everything. Said she'd always known something was wrong with Dad but couldn't put her finger on it. She's graduating next month with her master's. I'm flying out for the ceremony. Michael took it harder. He's young enough that he still wants to believe in his father, but old enough to understand what was done to me. We talk every week. He's in therapy, processing. I've told him he's allowed to love his father and still be angry at him. They're not mutually exclusive. The house in Westchester sold last month. I didn't need the space and I couldn't stand the memories. I bought Patricia's house instead, the one where I found her letters, where I discovered who my husband really was. I've turned her library into my office. Her books surround me while I study for the bar exam. Yes, I have to take it again after being inactive for so long. Sometimes I sit in her chair and talk to her. Thank her for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank her for the weapons she left me. Thank her for loving me enough to be brutally honest. I sleep alone now. Date occasionally. There's a professor at Portland State who makes me laugh, who listens when I talk about law, who thinks my comeback story is inspiring instead of threatening. Nothing serious yet. Maybe eventually. Maybe never. The point is, it's my choice. People ask me if I regret it. The confrontation, the public humiliation, the way I destroyed Richard's career along with our marriage, I don't. Here's what I learned. Sitting in that plaza hallway wearing Patricia's pearls and that red bikini-like armor, revenge isn't always about hurting someone back. Sometimes it's about refusing to be hurt anymore. Sometimes it's about choosing yourself with the same fierce loyalty you once gave away to someone who didn't deserve it. Richard took 24 years of my life. But he doesn't get the rest. He doesn't get to be the story I tell about myself. He's just a chapter, a long, painful one, but not the whole book. I'm writing the rest myself now. Patricia was right about everything. I was stronger than I knew, meaner than I thought. And when I finally stopped being nice, I was absolutely terrifying. But she was wrong about one thing. Revenge isn't a dish best served cold. It's best served legally documented, financially devastating, and witnessed by hotel security. My name is Eleanor Catherine Chen Bradford, and this is the story of how I lost everything and won. Anyway, not because I got my husband's money, not because I humiliated him publicly, not because I destroyed his career, but because I finally chose myself, and that, it turns out, is worth more than all the rest. Final scene, present day. I finish my coffee, set down my cup, and look at you, the camera, the audience, whoever's listening to this old woman's story about betrayal and resurrection. You know what the funny thing is? I say, and I'm smiling now, a real smile, not the plastic one I wore for 24 years. I thought finding that bikini was the worst moment of my life. I stood in that garage, holding it, feeling my heart break into 1,000 pieces. I thought I was dying. I stand up, walk to the window. The river flows below, constant and uncaring and beautiful. But I wasn't dying. I was waking up. After 2 decades of sleepwalking through someone else's life, I was finally painfully, devastatingly awake. I turn back, and there are tears in my eyes, but I'm still smiling. If you're listening to this and you're holding your own bikini, your own piece of evidence that you've been betrayed, that your life has been a lie, that the person you trusted most has been destroying you, I want you to know something. I lean forward, earnest now. You think this is the end, but it's not. It's the beginning. The beginning of the hardest thing you'll ever do, choosing yourself. Believing you deserve better. Having the courage to burn down everything you've built and start over. I wipe my eyes, but I'm still smiling. It's going to hurt. God, it's going to hurt. Some days you'll want to go back, to forgive, to make it work. Some days you'll doubt yourself, wonder if you're overreacting, if you're throwing away something precious. I shake my head firmly. You're not. You're throwing away something toxic. And yes, it might have been beautiful once. Yes, you might have loved them. Yes, you might have built a whole life together. But poison in a beautiful bottle is still poison. I sit back down, fold my hands in my lap like Patricia used to do. The system is designed to keep you there, to make you stay. Family will tell you to think of the children. Friends will say marriage is about compromise. Society will suggest you're being hasty, dramatic, vindictive. And part of you, the part that's been trained to be small, to be nice, to be accommodating, will agree with them. My voice drops, becomes fiercer. Don't listen. Listen to the part of you that knows you deserve better. The part that remembers who you were before they made you forget. The part that Patricia saw in me when I couldn't see it myself. I pick up a photograph from the table beside me. Me at 23. In my Columbia Law graduation robes, smiling like I could take on the world. This girl? I hold it up. She didn't sacrifice everything just so I could spend my 50s settling for a man who couldn't even bother to be faithful while his mother was dying. She deserved better. She deserved everything. I set the photo down gently. And so do you. So here's what I want you to do. If you're in my position, if you've found the evidence, if you know the truth, if you're standing at that crossroads between staying small and becoming dangerous, I count on my fingers. 1. Document everything. Every lie, every inconsistency, every missing dollar. Build your case like you're preparing for trial. Because you are. 2. Find your Patricia. Find someone who sees you clearly and loves you anyway. Someone who'll tell you the hard truths and give you weapons when you're ready to fight. 3. Don't tell them you know. Not yet. Rage is a fire and fire is powerful, but strategy is nuclear. Be nuclear. 4. Protect yourself legally. Talk to lawyers. Open your own accounts. Understand your rights. Knowledge is armor. 5. Wait for the right moment. Not the first moment, not the most dramatic moment, but the right moment. The one where you have leverage, where you have witnesses, where you have proof. And 6. When you finally act decisively. No half measures. No room for them to talk you out of it. No leaving doors open for reconciliation. Burn the bridge. Salt the earth. Make it impossible to go back. I lean back, exhausted but satisfied. Is it ruthless? Yes. Is it harsh? Absolutely. Is it what they deserve? That's not for me to say. But I'll tell you what it definitely is. Effective. I smile again, softer this time. I'm not telling you this story to encourage revenge. I'm telling you this story to encourage survival. Because that's what this is really about. Not punishing Richard. Not getting Patricia's money. Not even justice, though that's a nice bonus. It's about surviving. About refusing to disappear. About insisting that your life, your dreams, your identity matter as much as theirs. I stand up one more time, walk to the window, look out at the spring day. I'm 52 years old. In some ways, that's old. My first career is gone. My marriage is over. Half my life is behind me. I turn back, and I'm crying now, but they're not sad tears. But in other ways, I'm just beginning. I'm going back to law. I'm dating. I'm traveling. I'm writing my story instead of living in someone else's. I get to decide who I am now, what I want, what I'll tolerate, what I deserve. And what I deserve is everything I gave up and more. My voice strengthens, so if you're watching this, if you're holding that bikini or that receipt or that text message or whatever evidence of betrayal life has handed you, know this. You deserve everything too. Not just the scraps of attention they give you between affairs. Not just the life they allow you to have. Everything. Your dreams. Your career. Your identity. Your dignity. Your future. All of it. And if the person you loved can't give you that, if they've proven, through action if not words, that they value their pleasure over your pain, their convenience over your dreams, I look directly at the camera. Then take it yourself. Take everything. Take it legally, strategically, devastatingly. Take it and don't look back. Because you're not being cruel. You're not being vindictive. You're not being a bitch or difficult or any of the other words they'll call you. You're being free. I smile one last time. My name is Eleanor Catherine Chen Bradford. I'm 52 years old. I'm an attorney, again. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm Patricia's revenge. I'm my own revenge. I'm a woman who was lost and found herself. And if I can do it at 52 after 24 years of being small, you can do it too. Whatever age you are, whatever you've sacrificed, whatever you've lost, you can do it too. I walk toward the camera, reach out as if to turn it off. Start by documenting everything, and by choosing yourself. And in between, be strategic, be patient, be absolutely merciless when the time comes. Your future self is waiting. The woman you could have been is still possible. The life you dreamed of isn't gone, it's just postponed. My hand hovers over the camera. Go get it. Go get everything. You've earned it. The screen goes dark.